Well, today in the mini budget, the finance minister also tackled the thorny issue of the 60 billion rand that municipalities owe Eskom. Now, we heard about this earlier in the year, National Treasury willing to write off debt over a period of 3 years if municipalities who apply for debt relief comply with certain conditions. Let's understand a little bit more about how this plan is actually working. I'm joined now by local government analyst Dr Harlan Cloete. Dr Cloete, thank you so much for joining us. We did hear about this plan. Today, the finance minister spoke about it, and he did mention that a number of municipalities had actually qualified. So let's understand, what are the conditions to be in line for this debt write-off?
Good evening, Sally. Good evening to the viewers. Municipalities have been in distress for a very long time. And so some of the conditions, I think, is very strict conditions. It's not a question the headlines may read that debt will be written off, but municipalities will have to comply and will have to meet certain conditions. Certain of that is that they will have to ring fence the funding or the money that is owed to Eskom, and they will have to make sure that there's a very strict debt collection policy in place, and so municipalities have been in distress for a very long time, and on this program and on other programs we keep repeating the crisis of municipalities. And so really the crisis of municipalities is a governance crisis where there's a failure of governance which results in what we see.
Okay, so if it's a governance crisis, how is writing off the debt, because that's ultimately what it's going to amount to if all these conditions are met, how is that going to help future revenue collection? Because ultimately municipalities need to be fairly self-sustaining.
Yeah, no, you're right. The Treasury released a report last year that talks about capacity versus capability. And Treasury said that over the last 5 years, you won't believe it, almost 40 billion was spent on capacity building in municipalities. And I think what Eskom is saying, it is conditional. If you meet our conditions, if you want, and it's all about sustainability, making sure that the institution is strong. If we talk about in the National Development Plan, we speak about a capable state. And so we need to have a focus around capability, the capability, whether the municipality have got the processes, the structure, and the institutional knowledge to be able to make sure that the institution is sustainable. Ultimately, it's about sustainability. And almost 2/3 of our municipality in this country are in financial distress. And so it's never just one thing, debt collection is one thing, but then there are other processes as well that contributes to municipality being sustainable or effective.
So are you basically saying that it sounds great, but it's not really workable because the municipalities that really, really need that debt write-off are in such a shambles they probably can't meet the conditions?
There is no quick fix for municipalities. I'm saying we should resist the quick fix of building capacity. I just said 40 billion was spent on building individual capacity. Our municipalities are sitting with a crisis of confidence from the electorate, the citizens. There's a crisis of confidence inside. In some municipalities, it's a lack of will. In some, there's a lack of human resources. And so there's an array of challenges. So this grant, it may sound very good and well, but, and that's a big but, they will have to meet these conditions and prove to Eskom that they meet this before this debt is written off. Now, because you see, if we just write debt off, in 5 years' time, municipalities will be back at square one. And so the institution needs to be strengthened. That's why we talk about capability development instead of capacity development. It's a long-term project.
Yeah, let's drill down into those conditions. I mean, what I've got, and you'll tell me if these are the right conditions. My understanding is that your books have to be relatively well in order, and then Eskom will agrees to then hold any legal proceedings against you. Strict budgeting, financial reporting conditions will have to apply to municipalities and provincial treasuries. We know that there's, I think, in the region of 30 municipalities that have already applied for this. The finance minister said, actually, they've got the green light. So what happens to them now? I mean, the debt that they have written off, let's say that that debt gets written off over a 3-year period. Does that mean the people who fail to pay the municipality, because that's often why municipalities are in debt to Eskom, that those residents and businesses are also off the hook?
I don't think so necessarily. You know, I'm saying that if municipalities have fallen so far behind in terms of not paying Eskom, the question must be asked now, how has Eskom allowed this situation to escalate? If a municipality is not paying 1 month, 2 months, then certainly, then I must go after my money. And so municipalities sometimes collect this revenue, but then do not spend it, end up paying Eskom. They use the funding on other needs within that.
Right.
And sometimes it's corruption. And so I think Eskom also has to, the finger also points at Eskom in terms of the ability to collect the revenue from these municipalities. I think the move is to strengthen municipalities to ensure that there's a new culture. There has to be a culture of paying for services, but the municipalities must have a culture of paying Eskom, because all of this cannot be seen in isolation to the AG's report and the findings of the AG. And so really it's an integrated approach that involves oversight from the province, but not just oversight, because the report also said sometimes there's oversight, but municipalities, they completely disregard the oversight from the province.
There's a big mess. And so there may be this enticing promise of a debt write-off, but you have to meet quite strict conditions. At the end of the day, if debt is written off, that's money that Eskom should have in its coffers. It won't have that money in its coffers. Does it ultimately mean that the taxpayers are going to take the fall for that in a way?
I think the taxpayers has taken the fall if you look at municipalities over the last decade. And I think this is an attempt to say, okay, here's the carrot. We will write off this debt, but you need to meet certain conditions. And so in the long term, I think the long-term value that Eskom sees in this, we have to change the culture. People have to pay for service, but people are saying, I will pay for service if I get value for money. And so a lot of our municipalities, residents are simply not getting value for money. And so we need to collectively, municipalities, they are really at the heart of this developmental state. It's where the people experience the love or the indifference of the state. And so it's on all of us, you know. That's what the National Development Plan said so well, is that academia, the business community, all will have to play their part to make sure that local government functions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for speaking to us this evening. That is Dr. Harlan Cloete. He's a local government analyst joining us there. Now